Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and I'd like to welcome you to my tutorial, Physical Data Modeling Part 4. So if you've missed the first 3 parts, I invite you to go find those. One of the interesting things is that I've been saying all along that this is a 5-part tutorial, and I realize it's probably going to be 6. So just want to give you a heads up now. That there's going to be that there will be 6. So again, we're doing physical data modeling, which is sort of a combination of what proper data modelers would call logical data design and physical database design. And what we're doing is that we have selected we've decided that we're going to implement the data store using a relational database. And so a lot of the considerations of relational database technology have now come into the data model. And in parts 1 through 3, we made 3 different kinds of changes in the data model to get it ready to become a relational database. And here we're going to go get one more. And what we're going to do is we're going to start to work on this thing called normalization. Normalization is, generally speaking, removing redundant data from your design. And normalization has been the gold standard for relational database design for, a long time. Well, since the very beginning. And it's really the gold standard for relational databases that we're using for things like online transaction processing. A couple of reasons why we want those databases to be normalized. Reason one is kind of an old school kind of reason. If we don't have any extra redundant information, then we're not going to waste space. Now, this is how we got ourselves into the Y2K problem. So we certainly don't want that to be a major consideration in a world where disk space isn't as expensive of a resource as it used to be. But it's a consideration all the same. And then the second thing is, for our database to be trustworthy, if we're going to be using it for operational systems and that are going to have a lot of adds and changes, we're going to want to make sure that we only have each fact in the database one time. Because as soon as we have the possibility of having a fact in the database more than one time, we have the possibility of contradiction. Okay? And that's pretty bad. A little bit of contradiction can completely undermine our confidence in the database. So for those 2 reasons, we're trying to squeeze out all kinds of redundant information. We have these normal forms, which are rules about some goodness that our data model is supposed to meet. And the first one's called first normal form. And that's primarily where you get rid of repeating data elements on a table or groups of data elements. And I've been nice enough to create that situation down on system user. So let's go and find our way to system user. And we'll see that we're doing this in kind of an old school way. Instead of having a system user table or entity and having a role table or entity, we've decided that we're going to just put it all in system user. Well, that's a problem for a couple of reasons. One, practically speaking, what if your average user only has a single role, well, we've kind of used up the space for 3. Because so we've wasted a lot of disk space, all right, which is an old school consideration. The other consideration is, what if these, what if we have a user who has 10 roles that they can play? Well, we can't accommodate that. So this is a pretty kind of old school way to do it, pre-relational database. So how do we solve it? Well, we solve it by creating a separate entity or a table for role. So we're just going to drag out a new box, call it role, okay? And what are we going to have? Well, we're going to have an ID, role ID. And I think we're spelling them kind of like that here. And we have a role name. And I'm thinking that these are the roles of the actors on the use case diagram. So we had student, we had instructor, we had system user, we had system administrator. Actually, we do have that. So maybe one of the data elements that we have over on system user is system administrator. Maybe that's kind of duplicate to this sort of approach. Interesting idea. So this is a pretty small table. We're going to get rid of this extra attribute with a cut. Okay. And let's see what goes away. Well, the explicit roles can go away. So we're going to cut that. And we're going to cut number 2. And we're going to cut role 1. Okay. And now I'm going to argue, isn't the permission to act as a system administrator just the permission to play a role? So we would have a role ID for system admin, okay, and only people who were system admins would be linked up to that role. Yes, that's a better design. So we're going to get rid of this because it's redundant now. Cut that. And now things are getting a lot simpler. Okay. Let's take a short pause. Okay. Now we've got system user and we've got role. And so the question is, what kind of a relationship do they have to each other? And I'm going to suggest that when we associate a system user with a role, that it's a permission. They have permission to play that role. So they have a permission to play the role of student. They have permission to play the role of instructor. They have permission to play the role of system admin. Okay, and this is a typical kind of way that we express authorizations in a system. Okay, so let's look at the cardinalities of the relationship. So a system user can have, well, probably one-to-many roles. Okay, why put a system user in if they don't have any roles at all? Okay. And then look, a role can be a role for how many users? Well, could be 0, could be 1, could be many. So I just want to point out that we have a many-to-many relationship here. So since we're already in physical modeling, okay, and we've already chosen a relational database, we have to have an associative entity that makes the many-to-many relationship go. So let's go over and pull another box in between these two. Maybe we need to get a little bit of room, okay? And if the name of the relationship is permission or has permission, I'm thinking that the entity name or table name could just be permission. Okay. And again, are we going to carry any data? Well, I'm thinking not. I mean, what kind of data could you carry? Well, the date and time in which we gave them the permission, maybe user ID of the user who gave them permission. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities of things you might do for auditing. But so far, we don't see the need for that. So we're just going to get rid of the attributes that would carry data, proper data. And what are we going to have? Well, we're going to have all keys, right? And how do we come up with a key for an associative table or an associative entity? Well, it's the combination of the primary keys of the two primary tables, user ID and role IDs. We need two. Let's add another slot, insert primary key after. And now the first one is going to be called user ID. And then the second one is going to be called role ID. Okay, well, that looks good, right? And now we're going to need some relationships. And again, when we do these associative tables or associative entities, the many goes connected to the table that's in the middle. So I'm going to pull this out and wire the many side to the table in the middle. And then I'm going to pull it down and connect the one side to the table in the bottom. And again, I like to get the whole rectangle to light up green. That's the way I know I'm getting it the right way. So yes, I've got the cardinalities at the proper end. And now I'm going to pull out another relationship, connect the many side to system user, and connect the one side to permission. And it's misbehaving. So, okay, here it is. There's the end. And again, I want to light up the whole thing, and I've got it. Okay, so you can make some improvements. If, for instance, if you want to get these all to line up, you can click on one of these and you can roll the little dot in order to move it and get them kind of lined up. That looks a little prettier. All right. Okay, so here we removed a repeating attribute. Okay, we created a many-to-many. We got rid of one of the attributes we had with that is system admin, because we saw that we were able to accommodate that with role. And so that was kind of an old school way to do it, the way that we had it. And this is more elegant. And I think we've got it all done. And I just want to remind you with these associative tables, I don't require myself or my students to come up with a name for the relationships that connect them. The important thing is that they're, oh, I've got this backwards. How about this? I've got the many side up against system user. Well, it's a good thing I caught that. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to press my delete key. I actually have a Windows keyboard on my Mac here. And let me try this again. So I'm going to connect the many side to permission and the one side to system user. And that's what I really wanted. It's not what it did, but that's what I wanted. But I don't have to name them. Now, I happen to know that I don't have any other repeating attributes or groups of attributes because I didn't seed any into the design before we started. So that's it for this step. And I'm going to say bye until the next part.